We have to start with the speech of Alison Price from OpenStack Foundation, which traditionally open our appointments every year.
Hi, like Mariana said, my name is Alison Price and I'm with the OpenStack Foundation. Today I'm going to be talking about open infrastructure and going a little bit deeper into what we think it means. But before I get started, I do want to take a second and thank both Mariana and Davide and their teams for organizing events like this. It takes a lot of work, especially doing it in 2 cities back-to-back days. I'm tired just traveling these 2 events. But all of the work from them and the sponsors that are sponsoring the event, so please join me in thanking them for all of their hard work. Alright, so I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the OpenStack Foundation. So our mission as a foundation is to help people build and operate open infrastructure. Like I said, we have a community of over 100,000 people, and it's a very diverse community. It's not just one country, it's not just one company, and it's not just one type of employee. We have developers, we have operators, we have businesses building products around open infrastructure in 187 countries and representing over 600 companies. That's significant, and so there's definitely a lot of people, and what makes us a successful community is the collaboration that happens. OpenStack and the new projects that we've taken on are not supported by just one company. All of these people are coming together and collaborating both online via working groups and SIGs, or they're collaborating in person at regional events like this, or at our twice annual global summits, which we have a few coming up that I'll talk about in a minute. So what is open infrastructure? 2 years ago, the OpenStack Foundation broadened our focus beyond OpenStack to really embrace this term. And what we mean when we say open infrastructure is the IT infrastructure built with open source components. Like they talked about a little bit ago, open source is incredibly important when you're looking at the infrastructure layer because it provides that flexibility, the innovation, and the interoperability that make businesses succeed. And how do we make this happen? We make this happen through that collaboration. Our community makes that infrastructure layer and the software that powers it successful. When we first started with OpenStack, we tackled the private, public, and hybrid cloud. But as businesses started to evolve and the use cases evolved with them, new demands were being placed on their infrastructure. And we started listening to our users. First, they came to us 10 years ago when OpenStack started, and they needed to lower costs, and they needed an alternative to public cloud. But now they're looking at edge computing, and CI/CD, and containers. I think everyone is looking at containers. So the challenge then became, how are we evolving the infrastructure to adapt to these new challenges, and to make sure that the businesses have the software that they need to succeed with these use cases and the requirements from their customers. One of the things that Mark Collier at the OpenStack Foundation always says is, as all of these new challenges have come about, there's more open source than ever. That's the good news. But the bad news is, there's more open source than ever. So, as all of these projects come online, and as all of them start to adapt and evolve with these use cases, there start to become some integration challenges. And that's where the OpenStack Foundation is really trying to tackle those challenges and make sure that not only our software, so OpenStack, Kata Containers, Zuul, Starling X, and Airship, all of which I'll go in more detail in a minute, work well together, but also that we're working with those adjacent communities. We're working with Kubernetes, we're working with Ceph to make sure that our technologies work together and they don't break when they're put into production. OpenStack is not the end answer for everything and every use case, but it is the foundation that can integrate with all of these other technologies to make these use cases come to life. So what is our approach? So with this integration strategy, we have 4 steps that we believe in when trying to address these use cases. The first is identifying the use cases, which we just talked about. So looking at edge computing or CI/CD, you have your business challenges and you identify this use case as a strategy for you. Now, sometimes people jump into step 2 and they start building the technology, and that's where we like to shake it up a little bit. So we identify step 2 as collaboration. We want to see if there's other communities out there already building that software that just need help or they just need support, or if there's 2 technologies that need to come together and become one solution to address that use case. We don't believe in just jumping in and starting to develop before we identify where there's collaborative opportunities where we can work with other communities or within our own. Then next we go to building technology. So the collaboration definitely doesn't stop at step 2. It continues all the way through the entire cycle. So during step 3, we collaborate within our community, with adjacent communities, and with communities that are coming online to address the use cases that we've identified. And then last, but I think most importantly, is testing. Once you build the software, you have to continue to test it to make sure that what you've built, what companies are putting into production, isn't going to break. When someone has their mission-critical applications going live with the software that you've produced, it can't break on their biggest day of the year or day-to-day when phone calls are relying on it. One of the examples that I like to mention here is with Kubernetes. So 61% of OpenStack users in the last user survey said that they integrate Kubernetes and OpenStack. Not shocking, I think everyone knows that both of them are on the rise and neither of them replace the other. What's interesting is so when Kubernetes has a release, if it breaks with OpenStack during testing, then that release is on pause until they can figure out what the problems are so that those 2 technologies can continue to integrate well. And the same goes on the OpenStack side. We actually have a release in 2 weeks on the 16th called OpenStack Train. And if it breaks with Kubernetes, then our development team is working hard to make sure that those bugs are fixed before that release is announced. So next I want to kind of go back to step 3. Earlier we mentioned that we have a few additional projects. OpenStack is still at the core of what the OpenStack Foundation does. It has set an example for how to build a successful community. After all, we have one of the largest open source cloud deployment footprints in the entire world. So I think that all of these communities, as we bring them online, are taking learnings, what OpenStack did right, what we did wrong, and where they can make adjustments to make sure that their software and their communities are successful. First, I'm going to start with OpenStack. As many of you know, OpenStack is the de facto standard for private cloud and has thousands of private clouds deployed throughout the world. But it also has dozens of public clouds throughout the world as well, with over 60 availability zones. So it's definitely something that is a versatile, flexible technology that has addressed the cloud computing needs of hundreds of organizations. And it couldn't do that without the support of the upstream community. It's kind of insane and shocking to know, but OpenStack is one of the top 3 most active open source projects, next to only the Linux kernel and Chromium. 65,000 commits were made last year, and this number is just continuing to go, and the upstream community is continuing to be active, engaged, and grow. We actually, for Train, I read this morning that we have 1/3 of our contributors are contributing for the first time. So we're continuing to get new people through OpenStack Upstream Institute and education through what it means to contribute to a vibrant, successful community. And this community has a big job. There are hundreds of organizations who rely on OpenStack across industries, across country, and across technologies that rely on them for their business critical applications. Just last week, I was at the OpenStack Day in Berlin and heard from BMW and Volkswagen and Audi on how important their development of self-driving cars and just their day-to-day operations within their factories is reliant on OpenStack working, and it working well. So this is just a small snapshot of what kinds of users are relying on OpenStack to power their infrastructure and keep their end users happy. One of our newer projects, Airship, is a project that was pioneered by AT&T and SK Telecom out of Korea. And Airship integrates OpenStack and Kubernetes to scale your infrastructure. So when you combine OpenStack and Kubernetes, you can have one workflow that helps you deploy the environment as well as perform upgrades later. And it's really starting to take off with our vendor ecosystem. Mirantis and SUSE and Ericsson and Dell are all starting to productize Airship because they believe in what it's doing and how it can power their customers' edge computing and infrastructure stories. AT&T spoke at our last summit in Denver about how their 5G strategy that they're rolling out this year, starting in the United States, relies on Airship to work in production, and they're currently working on their 2.0 release due later this year or early next year. Our second pilot project, so Airship and Starling X are both pilots since they're fairly new. Starling X was born out of Wind River and Intel, and it is a full stack for edge computing. So it can be deployed at the edge for high performance and low latency applications. And is really important for edge computing and industrial IoT scenarios. They just had their second release, and one user that's actually speaking at our upcoming event in Shanghai is China UnionPay. China UnionPay is one of the largest banks in the world, I think the largest in China, and they have over 500,000 customers, billions of dollars done going through their bank every day. And they're actually working on a Starling X POC for their contactless payment system so that they can deploy clouds at the edge for all of the different payment systems that they have throughout China. Zool, which recently got confirmed as a top-level project joining OpenStack, was actually born out of the OpenStack project. It is our CI/CD framework focusing on project gating. And Zool really focuses on step 4 of our integration strategy, testing. So if you're using Zool, if you're BMW or Volvo or GoDaddy, you're using Zool to make sure that your code doesn't break when it's in production. If you start to push code and it breaks, then Zool's going to flag it and push it back to your development team so you can fix the bugs and get it production ready. And last but definitely not least is Kata Containers, which is also a confirmed top-level project for the OpenStack Foundation. Kata was actually our first pilot project that we launched 2 years ago, coming out of Intel's Clear Containers project. But Kata really focuses on the container security. So giving users the speed of containers that they want to scale their infrastructure, but the isolation and security that VMs have come to offer. And it is popular. So it has definitely gained a lot of support, whether it's Baidu, one of China's largest search engines, starting to run Kata with OpenStack. But it's also gained the awareness of the big players in the public cloud market. So Google and Amazon Web Services and Microsoft and even OpenStack Public Cloud Vexhost have all donated infrastructure resources to make sure that Kata Containers can work on these different cloud providers and so that they can pass that feedback along to the community and as they continue to develop their software and enhance their integrations. So like I said, today is a really important event because it's a regional event where we can kind of talk about how OpenStack and open infrastructure is having an impact on the Italian market. But we also have global open infrastructure summits. The next one is in Shanghai in a month from tomorrow, actually, as terrifying as that sounds. But we also have one upcoming in Vancouver in June, and then we'll be back around here next fall. But I do want to say I will be here all day, and if you're building open infrastructure, or you're using it, or you want to, or you're building products around it, please come talk to me. The OpenStack Foundation definitely wants to help support you or answer questions, or see what we can do to make that collaboration easier for both of us.